It is the BS. No, it's not the BS show. It's the BJ.
Formerly the BS
Yeah.
show.
Well, you know what? I've talked to Shelly. Some morning we'll have her on too. The BS show may resurface in some form, but that's a whole nother story. Okay.
I'd love that.
This is the BJ.show, BJShow.co. Isn't that what our website is? Although when you go to it, it goes nowhere right now. We're still working on that. It's called Egbert Radio. I'll give you a rundown of what we're doing. We're turning this into a talk station. It's John and I between 7 and 8. Then at 8 to noon, we have Armstrong and Getty. Excellent show. These guys get it. They're conservative, but the other part of what I love about them is they're funny. They have fun with the show. It's not serious stuff. That's from 8 to noon, Armstrong and Getty. Then from noon to 3, the guy gets a little bit serious, but you know what his little side dish in his show is? Guy's name is Eric Erickson. You know his little side dish, and I do not use dish in an inappropriate way.
Besides Red State?
He loves
What do you mean?
He loves to cook.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He gives out recipes on the air all the time. And I'm going to me, it's like, okay, that just goes right over my head because I'm the guy.
Yeah.
The only recipe I want is, how many minutes in the microwave does it go? You know what I mean?
Or the air fryer. I'm an air fryer guy these days.
Yeah, I have one of those too, and I love it. Okay, then from 3 to 6, we have Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. 3 dudes from 3 different generations. There's an Xer, there's a millennial, and there's a boomer in there, and it's pretty interesting. They talk about all the things. And once again, entertaining. The guys are fun. They do some contests from time to time. And because I have always loved talk radio, I've done a talk station before. We originally had The Mouth, and quite honestly, a very well listened to station at its time. We had Brian Nieves, who was a real spark plug to the station, on from 7 to 9. Then we had Dennis Miller at one point in time, Neil Bortz. God, Dennis Miller was good when he did talk radio.
Oh, he was so good.
Neil Bortz was so good, his wife made him retire. That's what happened. Literally one day he came on the air and says, my wife wants me to retire. And one of the things that happened, this is sort of a sad situation when you run a radio show like that. They had a guy who was their engineer who turned out to be really funny. And in a strange sort of way, he had sort of an interesting accent. He had a real Southern accent. This is a station out of Atlanta. And his name was Royal. I don't know if that was his real name, but they called him Royal. And Royal was probably in his early 40s. And Royal was a big part of the show because, Neil Bortz was a very opinionated, conservative kind of guy, a former attorney, really interesting guy. And they would bring Royal in, and Royal would give you sort of the down-to-earth, good old boy, viewpoint of what they were talking about. Well, one morning, Neil Bortz comes on the air and just sounds horrible. Royal died, had a heart attack.
Oh, no. Yikes.
And died at like 42 years old. And quite honestly, the show was never the same. And what happened was Neil Bortz's wife essentially kept saying to him, look at Royal. He was in the prime of his life. You are not in the prime of your life anymore. You're in your 60s. Hang it up and let's move on down the road. So they did. So anyway, long-winded explanation. Okay, have you seen this stuff about Elon Musk? Have you seen this?
You gotta be a little bit more vague, Brad. There's only 100 stories about him a day.
He's interviewed by this is actually sort of funny. If you listen to the audio, I can't run the audio as it is off of the show, but if you listen to the audio, it is so incredibly funny. He's being interviewed by some guy who's supposedly some well-known reporter. I've never heard of the guy before. And the guy is obviously not on Musk's side. And they're talking about the fact that how do you feel about the fact that, and Musk had this situation where within the last week or so he said something that some people said he was offending the Jews by, and I think he probably did his comeuppance by going over to Israel in the last couple of days and spending some time with Netanyahu and the whole bit. So anyway, the reporter asked him, how do you feel the fact that a lot of these companies have dropped their advertising on Twitter? And he says they can go F themselves.
Yeah.
And when the reporter asks, and the reporter is like, there's this long silence. Like the reporter is going like, that's not what I expected, And then he asked the question again, and where is it? I thought I had it here. Oh, you know what? I do have it here. Hold on, I saved it here. Here's the story. Here it is. Okay, this is who's reporter. Come on, load up here. Elon Musk tells advertisers who left X, go F yourself. SpaceX and Tesla CEO Elon Musk had some harsh words for advertisers who are fleeing the platform X. Quote, go F yourself, Musk, owner of X, said during a Wednesday afternoon appearance at the New York Times. Yes, this is at the New York Times Deal Book Summit. I don't know what's the Deal Book Summit. You know what that is?
No, I mean, book is usually as what you would refer to what the stocks that finance people cover. You know, if you say that somebody's talking their book, that means that they're pitching their own set of stocks. So maybe that's what it means.
Okay, Musk made the comment while being interviewed by Andrew Ross Sorkin, speaking about the current advertising.
Yeah.
You know who he is?
Yeah, so he's a CNBC morning host, and he is quite progressive.
Well, here we go. This is what Musk said. What this advertising boycott is going to do to us, it is going to kill the company, Musk said, and the whole world would know that these advertisers killed the company. So he's essentially saying, yeah, you're going to kill X, and you know what? Guess who killed it? These companies.
Yeah.
In response, Disney CEO Bob Iger, who earlier discussed Disney pulling advertising from the platform, Musk didn't hold back. He said, and Musk says, don't advertise. If someone is going to try and blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money. Go F yourself. Musk adding, go F yourself. Is that clear? Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience, that's how I feel. Don't advertise. He's talking to Bob Iger.
That's wonderful. And you know what this proves, Brad, is that for years, Twitter was a public company, ticker symbol TWTR. And the beauty of taking a company private is you are not only do you not have to please your board of directors, you don't have a quarterly earnings call that you have to get on and talk about. And the Andrew Ross Sorkins of the world would say, but I heard that company X isn't happy with you. You don't have to answer that question 4 times a year because you own the company.
Look, I couldn't agree with you more. And to me, Musk is one of those guys that I know he ruffles a lot of people's feathers, but I've gone with this thing. And matter of fact, man, I have to tell you something. I'm embarrassed again. I told you I did this back in September. I was one of the presenters on the St. Charles County GOP.
Yeah.
They do this, I think, once a year or something like that, called their candidate school. And what you're doing is...
the candidate training. They get everybody together and teach them how to be a good Republican.
Well, not to be a good Republican, essentially how to win.
Well, how to get elected.
How to get elected, you know. I mean, some of them aren't necessarily good Republicans, but that's a whole other story.
Good point.
And the guy's name was, and I ran into him. He was sat at my table when I went to chamber meeting on Tuesday, and I called him Ron. And his name's Dave. God, I could kill myself. Dave Hinman. Okay, but the point I was going to make was that with when we talked about this in the candidate school, everybody was always sort of, I don't know. To me, it was sort of like you're sort of one of the people in the who's one of the instructors. I won't say who it was. Said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is how you win elections. Essentially, how you win elections is you knock on doors and you use yard signs. And at one point in time, they even said, one of the presenters even said, don't worry about a website, and you don't have to do, and I wouldn't even bother with Twitter. I'm thinking to myself, so I get up, I'm the last speaker of the day, and I get up and I start my presentation by saying, let me tell you my heroes are. My heroes are Thomas Edison. My heroes are Nikolai Tesla. My heroes are Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. Those people are my heroes because they were people that blew things up. They were disruptors was the term. It used to be very highly used. You don't hear too much anymore. Yeah. Essentially, what all these people have done is they've disrupted how things work. Thomas Edison disrupted things with electrification, when light bulbs, and Nikola Tesla, there's all sorts of things. There's a whole thing sort of interesting. There's a thing that essentially in our parlance, everybody says Marconi is the father of radio. Actually, it was Tesla who fathered radio, but that's a whole other story. But you look at these people, and what they did was they went against the grain, and they took all the stones and arrows that people threw and shot at them, and essentially said, look, this is how I feel. I'm going to keep moving forward. You're not going to dissuade me. And, how many times, if you go back and you read the history of Apple, how they were close to like going out of business, and how many times did Bill Gates and was Steve Wozniak, they were in the point where, I remember one of my favorite stories. I think the guy's name is Fred Smith. I think he just stepped down as CEO, the founder and CEO of a Federal Express. You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard the name.
Isn't it Fred Smith? I have to look it up.
I don't know what it is. I could look it up.
This is an honest-to-God true story. 1 week, their cash flow tanked, and they didn't have enough money to make payroll. So what Fred did was, since they had all these jets, they flew out to Las Vegas and gambled, and he won enough money to make payroll for the next week. I mean, that's how close FedEx came from going under, because 1 week they couldn't make payroll. And now you look at a company like that and it's like, how in the world did that company, ever, be that small and that fragile that 1 week, that the fact that they didn't have enough money 1 week, it could have sunk the company. You know what I'm saying?
And first of all, this is analogous to what you brought up yesterday about Mike Kehoe's life story, and being at any given point, he was, a couple paychecks away from ruin before he worked for Dave Sinclair. Brad knows that, that I compare everything to the pro wrestling world. Vince McMahon's WWE has a market cap of over $8 billion now with the letter B. In the early 90s, things were so bad that he was going through the company and having the company that delivered water, like Absopure, the company that delivered corporate water.
Right.
They were removing the barrels of water from the halls in Stamford, Connecticut, because they couldn't pay for recreational water for their employees. And he stuck it out, and now the company's worth over $8 billion.
Well, I'm going to be, brutally honest here. That's why I keep sticking out what I do with these stations. I mean, this has been really tough for me. And I think the biggest problem we have nowadays is the image that nobody listens to radio. And it's interesting. Something came out just the other day that, I don't know if we talked about this or not, that Australia had this big research came out and almost mirrored exactly the same as the United States, where, in their survey, 86% of the adult population listens to radio at least once a week. Now, when they do, I know people go, well, once a week. Well, what they're doing is they're looking at people's habits. And if you do something once a week, chances are you do it more than once a week. And the idea being that is if you go to the gym once a week, it is somewhat of a habit. But as opposed to people that buy a gym membership and then don't go for 3 months. And the idea being is when they look at this, they're saying, and in radio, I think we're still like low 90s, the 92, 93% of the adult population listens to radio at least once a week, which beats everything, including internet, social media, blah, 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 blah. But yet you go into a client and they'll go like, well, does anybody listen to radio anymore? And my running joke is always when I have somebody like that, and here's my stupid little pitch I always say, and especially if it's something like a restaurant. I said, well, you know what? I own the station, so I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm going to do a deal. How about I give you a month's worth of free advertising? And here's what I want to do. I want to watch you. Could you watch your numbers? Oh, yeah, watch my numbers real close. Okay, on the day we start the advertising, give me what your numbers are. And then a month later, tell me what the numbers are after I run this free advertising campaign for you, and then we'll get together and discuss the numbers.
Yep.
And they go, well, that's it? I go, yeah, but there's one catch. I get the right to add. And they'll say, like, what do you mean you get the right to add? Oh, well, it's a restaurant. It's a restaurant. I say, like, hey, Joe's Diner, only 8 people last week got ptomaine food poisoning, which is better than the week before when we had 12 people who came down with food poisoning. And
they say, what?
And they go, whoa, you can't say that. I go, I didn't say I was going to promote your restaurant. I said I was going to move your numbers. That's what I'm going to do.
Talk about it, yeah.
And I'm going to do it for a month for free. And they'll go, whoa, that's different. I go, why is it different? Why is it different? Why if I say something bad about your restaurant, why do you think that that's going to work? Whereas if I say something good about your restaurant, it won't work. Anyway.
And they have no answer to that.
Well, it's one of those crazy things. It's stupid stuff. Stupid things I do. Okay, we have to take a break. Last break of the morning. God, the morning goes right by. 7. Hold on a minute. I got to set my break up here. Did I do it right? I didn't. Now I will. Okay, 7:40.